The circle of influence is a smaller circle within the circle of concern that embraces the things you can actually do something about. The reactive tendency is to focus on the circle of concern, but this only causes the inner circle of influence to be diminished. The nature of energy focused on the outer circle of concern is negative, and when you combine that negative energy with neglect of the circle of influence, inevitably the circle of influence gets smaller. But proactive people focus on their circle of influence. As a result, that circle increases. In my later teens, I noticed that Mom and Dad were becoming very critical of each other. There were arguments and tears. They would say things that hurt, and they knew what to say. There was also making up, and everything's fine. But over time, the arguments increased and the hurt got deeper. When I was about 21, they finally separated. I remember at the time feeling a great sense of duty and a desire to help fix it. I guess that's a natural response for a child. You love your parents. You want to do everything you can. I would say to my dad, "Why don't you just go to Mom and say, 'I'm sorry. I know I've done lots of things that hurt you, but please forgive me. Let's work at this. I'm committed to it.'" And he would say, "I can't. I'm not going to bare my soul like that and have it stumped on again." I would say to my mom, "Look at everything you've had together. Isn't it worth trying to save?" And she would say, "I can't do it. I simply cannot handle this man." There was deep unhappiness, deep anguish, deep anger on both sides. And both Mom and Dad went to unbelievable effort to get us children to see that their side was right and the other was wrong. When I finally realized they were going to divorce, I couldn't believe it. I felt so empty and sad inside. Sometimes I would just weep. One of the most solid things in my life was gone, and I became consumed with self-focus. Why me? Why can't I do something to help? I had a very good friend who finally said to me, "You know what you need to do? You need to stop feeling sorry for yourself. Just look at you. This is not your problem. You are connected to it, but this is your parents' problem, not yours. You need to stop feeling sorry for yourself and figure out what you can do to support and love each of your parents, because they need you more than they have ever needed you before." When my friend said that to me, something happened inside. I suddenly realized that I was not the victim here. My inner voice said, "Your greatest responsibility as a son is to love each of your parents and to chart your own course. You need to choose your response to what has happened here." That was a profound moment in my life. It was a moment of choice. It was realizing that I was not a victim and that I could do something about it. So I focused on loving and supporting both my parents, and I refused to take sides. My parents did not like it. They accused me of being neutral, wimpy, not being willing to take a stand. But they both came to respect my position over time. As I thought about my own life, it was suddenly as if I could step aside from myself, my family experience, their marriage, and become a learner. I knew that someday I wanted to be married and have a family. So I asked myself, what does this mean to you, Brent? What are you going to learn from this? What kind of marriage are you going to build? Which of your weaknesses that you happen to share with your parents are you going to give up? I decided that what I really wanted was a strong, healthy, growing marriage. And I have since found that when you have that kind of resolve, it gives you the sustaining power to swallow hard in difficult moments, to not say something that will hurt feelings, to apologize, to come back to it, because you are affirming something that is more important to you than just the emotion of the moment. I also made the resolve to always remember that it's more important to be one than to be right or have it your way. The tiny victory that comes from winning the argument only causes greater separation, which really deprives you of the deeper satisfaction of a marriage relationship. I count that as one of my greatest life learnings. And from that, I determined that when I faced a situation where I wanted something different from what my wife wanted, and I did something dumb that put a wall between us, which even at that time I realized I would do on a regular basis, I would not live with it or let it expand, but would always apologize. I would always say, "I'm sorry. and reaffirm my love and commitment to her and work it out. I determined to always do everything in my power, not to be perfect, because I knew that was impossible, but to keep working at it, to keep trying. It hasn't been easy. Sometimes it takes a lot of effort when there are deep issues, but I believe my resolve reflects a priority that might never have been there had I not gone through the painful experience of my parents' divorce. Think about this man's experience. Here were the two people he loved most in the world, the people from whom he had gotten much of his own sense of identity and security over the years, and their marriage was falling apart. He felt betrayed. His own sense of security was put in jeopardy. His vision, his feelings about marriage were threatened. He was in deep pain. He later said it was the most difficult, the most challenging time in his life. Through the help of a friend, he realized that their marriage was in his circle of concern, but not in his circle of influence. He decided to be proactive. He realized he couldn't fix their marriage, but there were things he could do. And his inner compass told him what those things were. So he began to focus on his circle of influence. He worked on loving and supporting both parents, even when it was hard, even when they reacted in negative ways. He gained the courage to act based on principle rather than reacting to their parents' emotional response. He also started to think about his own future, his own marriage. He began to recognize values he wanted to have in his relationship with his future wife. As a result, he was able to begin his marriage with the vision of that relationship in mind. And the power of that vision has carried him through the challenges to it. It's given him the power to apologize and to keep coming back. Can you see what a difference a circle of influence focus makes? Consider another example. I'm aware of one set of parents who decided that the behavior of their daughter had deteriorated to the point where allowing her to continue to live at home would destroy the family. The father determined that when she got home that night, he would tell her that she had to do certain things or move out the next day. So he sat down to wait for her to come. While he was waiting, he decided to take a 3x5 card and list the changes she had to make in order to stay. When he finished the list, he had feelings that only those who have suffered a similar situation can know. But in this emotionally pained spirit, as he continued to wait for her to come home, he turned the card over. The other side was blank. He decided to list on that side of the card the improvements he would agree to make if she would agree to her changes. He was in tears as he realized that his list was longer than hers. In that spirit, he humbly greeted her when she came home, and they began a long, meaningful talk, beginning with his side of the card. His choice to begin with that side made all the difference, inside out. Now just think about the word responsible. Responds able. Able to choose your own response. That is the essence of proactivity. It is something we can do in our own lives. The interesting thing is that when you focus on your circle of influence and it gets larger, you are also modeling to others through your example, and they will tend to focus on their inner circle also. Sometimes others may do the opposite out of reactive anger, but if you're sincere and persistent, your example can eventually impact the spirit of everyone so that they will become proactive and take more initiative, more responsibility in the family culture. One of the best ways to tell whether you're in your circle of influence or circle of concern is to listen to your own language. If you're in your circle of concern, your language will be blaming, accusing, reactive. I can't believe the way these kids are behaving. They're driving me crazy. My spouse is so inconsiderate. Why did my father have to be an alcoholic? If you're in your circle of influence, your language will be proactive. It will reflect a focus on the things you can do something about. I can help create rules in our family that will enable the children to learn about the consequences of their behavior. I can look for opportunities to teach and reinforce positive behavior. I can be considerate. I can model the kind of loving interaction I would like to see in my marriage. I can learn more about my father and his addiction to alcohol. I can seek to understand him, to love, and to forgive. I can choose a different path for myself, and I can teach and influence my family so that this will not be part of their lives. In order to get a deeper insight into your own level of proactivity or reactivity, you might like to try the following experiment. You may want to ask your spouse or someone else to participate with you and give you feedback. 1. Identify a problem in your family culture. 2. Describe it to someone else, or write your description down using completely reactive terms. Focus on your circle of concern. Work hard. See how completely you can convince someone else that this problem is not your fault. 3. Describe the same problem in completely proactive terms. Focus on your response ability. Talk about what you can do in your circle of influence. Convince someone else that you can make a real difference in this situation. Now just think about the difference in the two descriptions. Which one more closely resembles your normal habit pattern when talking about family problems? If you find that you are using essentially reactive language, you can take immediate steps to replace that kind of language with proactive words and phrases. The very act of forcing yourself to use the words will help you recognize habits of reactivity and begin to change. Teaching responsibility for language is another way we can help even young children learn to integrate habit 1. Colleen, our daughter. Recently, I tried to help our 3-year-old be more responsible for her language. I said to her, in our family, we don't say hate or shut up or call people stupid. You have to be careful about the way you talk to people. You need to be responsible. Every now and then, I would remind her, don't call people names, Erica. Try to be responsible for the way you talk and act. Then the other day, I happened to remark, oh, I hated that movie. Erica immediately replied, don't say hate, Mom. You're responsible. Erica is now like the Gestapo in our family. We all have to watch our language when we're around her. One very practical, useful way to understand and apply this whole idea of proactivity and this inside-out approach of focusing on the circle of influence is by using the analogy or metaphor of the emotional bank account. The emotional bank account represents the quality of the relationship you have with others. It's like a financial bank account in that you can make deposits by proactively doing things that build trust in the relationship, or you can make withdrawals by reactively doing things that decrease the level of trust. And at any given time, the balance of trust in the account determines how well you can communicate and solve problems with another person. If you have a high balance in your emotional bank account with a family member, then there's a high level of trust. Communication is open and free. You can even make a mistake in the relationship, and the emotional reserves will compensate for it. But if the balance is low or even overdrawn, then there's no trust, and thus no authentic communication. It's like walking on minefields. You're always on your guard. You have to measure every word, and even your better intentions are misunderstood. Remember the story of my friend who found his son again? You could say that the relationship between this father and son was $100, $200, or even $10,000 overdrawn. There was no trust, no real communication, no ability to work together to solve problems. And the harder this father pushed, the worse it got. But then my friend did something proactive that made a tremendous difference. Taking an inside-out approach, he became an agent of change. He stopped reacting to his son. He made an enormous deposit in this boy's emotional bank account. He listened, really, deeply listened, and the boy suddenly felt validated, affirmed, recognized as an important human being. One of the biggest problems in many family cultures is the reactive tendency to continually make withdrawals instead of deposits. Consider what my friend Dr. Glenn C. Griffin suggests is a typical day in the life of a teenager. A day's input to a teen. What kind of impact will this kind of communication, day in and day out, have on the balance in the emotional bank account? Remember, love is a verb. One of the great benefits of being proactive is that situation. There are always things you can do that will make relationships better. One father from a blended family shared this experience. I have always considered myself to be an honest, hard-working man. I was successful at work and in my relationships with my wife and children, with the exception of our 15-year-old daughter, Tara. I had made several futile attempts to mend my broken relationship with her, but every attempt had ended in a frustrating failure. She just didn't trust me, and whenever I tried to resolve our differences, I seemed to make things worse. Then I learned about the emotional bank account, and I came across a question that really hit me hard. Ask yourself, are those around you made happier or better by your presence in the home? In my heart, I had to answer, no. My presence is making things worse for my daughter Tara. That introspection almost broke my heart. After the initial shock, I came to the realization that if this sad truth were to change, it would only be because I changed myself, because I changed my own heart. I not only had to act differently toward her, I needed to commit to truly loving her. I had to quit criticizing and always blaming her, to quit thinking that she was the source of our poor relationship. I had to quit competing with her by always making my will supersede hers. I knew that unless I acted on these feelings immediately, I would probably never act on them. So I resolved to do so. I made a commitment that for 30 days I would make 5 deposits daily into my emotional bank account with Tara, and absolutely no withdrawals. My first impulse was to go to my daughter and tell her what I had learned, but my better judgment told me that the time was not right for teaching with words. It was time to begin making deposits. Later that day, when Tara came home from school, I greeted her with a warm smile and asked, "How are you?" Her curt reply was, "A lot you care." I swallowed hard and tried to act as if I'd not heard it. I smiled and replied, "I just wondered how you were doing." During the next several days, I worked hard to keep my commitment. I put reminder stickies everywhere, including on the rearview mirror of my car. I continued to dodge her frequent barbs, which was not easy for me because I had been conditioned to fight back. Each experience caused me to see just how cynical our relationship had become. I began to realize how often, in the past, I had expected her to change before I would do anything myself to make things better. As I focused on changing my own feelings and actions rather than hers, I began to see Tara in a whole new light. I began to appreciate her great need to be loved. And as I continued to let the negative blows glance off, I felt an increasing strength to do so, without any inner resentment, but with increased love. Almost without effort, I found myself beginning to do little things for her, little favors that I knew I did not have to do. While she studied, I would quietly walk in and turn up the light. When she asked, "What's this all about?" I'd reply, "I just thought you could read better with more light." Finally, after about 2 weeks, Tara looked at me quizzically and asked, "Dad, there's something different about you. What's happening? What's going on?" I said, "I've come to recognize some things about myself that need changing. That's all. I'm so grateful now that I can express my love to you by treating you the way I know I should have treated you all along." We began to spend more time together at home, just talking and listening to each other. More than 2 months have gone by now, and our relationship has been much, much deeper and more positive. It's not flawless yet, but we're getting there. The pain is gone. The trust and love increase each day, and it's due to the simple yet profound idea of making only deposits and no withdrawals in the emotional bank account, and doing it consistently and sincerely. As you do, you will begin to see the person differently and begin to replace self-serving motives with service motives. I am certain that if you ask my daughter what she thinks of me now, she would quickly reply, "My dad, we're friends. I trust him. You can see how this father used proactivity to make a real difference in his relationship with his daughter. Notice how he used all four human gifts. Look at how self-aware he was. Look at how he could stand apart from himself, from his daughter, from the whole situation and see what was happening. Notice how he could compare what was happening with what his conscience was telling him was right. Notice how he had a sense of what was possible. Through his imagination, he could envision something different. And notice how he used his willpower to act. And as he used all four gifts, look at what began to happen. Things began to improve dramatically. Not only the quality of the relationship, but also how he felt about himself and how his daughter felt about herself. It was like flooding a toxic culture with a healing balm. That's literally what he did. He made many deposits because he got his head out of the weaknesses of other people and focused on his own circle of influence, on those things he could do something about. He was truly an agent of change. Just remember, every time you build your emotional life on the weaknesses of others, you give your power, that is, your unique human gifts, away to their weaknesses, so that your emotional life is a product of how they treat you. You disempower yourself and empower the weaknesses of others. But when you focus on your circle of influence and on doing what you can to build the emotional bank account, to build relationships of trust and unconditional love, you dramatically increase your ability to influence others in positive ways. Let me share with you some specific ideas, some deposits you can make in your own family that may be helpful. These are practical ways that you can begin to practice habit 1 in your family now. Some years ago, I spent a special evening with 2 of my sons. It was an organized father and sons outing, complete with gymnastics, wrestling matches, hot dogs, orangeade, and a movie, the works. In the middle of the movie, Sean, who was then 4 years old, fell asleep in his seat. His older brother Stephen, who was 6, stayed awake, and we watched the rest of the movie together. When it was over, I picked Sean up in my arms, carried him out to the car, and laid him in the back seat. It was very cold that night, so I took off my coat and gently arranged it over and around him. When we arrived home, I quickly carried Sean in and tucked him into bed. After Stephen put on his pajamas and brushed his teeth, I lay down next to him to talk about the night out together. "How'd you like it, Stephen?" "Fine," he answered. "Did you have fun?" "Yes." "What did you like most?" "I don't know. The trampoline, I guess." "That was quite a thing, wasn't it, doing those somersaults and tricks in the air like that?" There wasn't much response on his part. I found myself making conversation. I wondered why Stephen wouldn't open up more. He usually did when exciting things happened. I was a little disappointed. I sensed something was wrong. He had been so quiet on the way home and getting ready for bed. Suddenly, Stephen turned over on his side to face the wall. I wondered why, and lifted myself up just enough to see his eyes welling up with tears. "What's wrong, honey? What is it?" He turned back, and I could sense he was feeling some embarrassment for the tears and his quivering lips and chin. "Daddy, if I were cold, would you put your coat around me too?" Of all the events of that special night out together, the most important was a little act of kindness, a momentary unconscious showing of love to his little brother. What a powerful, personal lesson that was to me of the importance of kindness. In relationships, the little things are the big things. One woman told of growing up in a home where there was a plaque on the kitchen wall that read, "To do carefully and constantly and kindly many little things is not a little thing." I remember the pressure of trying to do well in school and being on the debate team and involved in 3 or 4 other things all at the same time. And sometimes I'd come home and I'd find my whole room clean and organized. There would be a note that said, "Love, the good fairy." And I knew Mom had just worked her head off to help me get ahead because I was so overwhelmed with what I had to do. It really took a load off. I would come into that room and just whisper, "Oh, thank you, thank you." Little kindnesses go a long way toward building relationships of trust and unconditional love. Just think about the impact in your own family of using words or phrases such as "thank you," "please," "excuse me," "you go first," and "may I help you?" Or performing unexpected acts of service such as helping with the dishes, taking children shopping for something that's important to them, or phoning to see if there's anything you can pick up at the store on the way home, or finding little ways to express love, such as sending flowers, tucking a note in a lunchbox or briefcase, or phoning to say "I love you" in the middle of the day, or expressing gratitude and appreciation, or giving sincere compliments, or showing recognition, not just at times of special achievement or on occasions such as birthdays, but on ordinary days, and just because your spouse or your children are who they are. 12 hugs a day. That's what people need. Hugs come physically, verbally, visually, environmentally. We all need 12 hugs a day, different forms of emotional nourishment from other people, or perhaps spiritual nourishment through meditation or prayer. I know of one woman who grew up in poverty and contention, but came to realize how important such kindness and courtesy are in the home. She learned it where she worked, at a very prestigious hotel where the entire staff had a culture of courtesy toward every guest. She knew how good it made people feel to be treated so royally. She also realized how good it made her feel to perform acts of kindness and courtesy. One day she decided to try acting this way at home with her own family. She began doing little acts of service for family members. She began using language that was positive, gentle, and kind. When serving breakfast, for example, she would say, as she did at work, "It's my pleasure." She told me it transformed both her and her family and began a new intergenerational cycle. One thing my brother John and his wife Jane do in their family is take time every morning to compliment one another. Family members take turns being the target for such compliments, and what a difference that makes. One morning, their strong, athletic son, the football hero of the high school, came bounding down the stairs with such energy, such excitement, that Jane couldn't imagine why he was so animated. "Why are you so excited?" she asked. "It's my morning for compliments," he replied with a smile. One of the most important dimensions of kindness is expressing appreciation. What an important deposit to make and to teach in the family. Perhaps there is nothing that tests our proactive capacity as much as saying, "I'm sorry" to another person. If your security is based on your image or your position or on being right, to apologize is like draining all the juice from your ego. It wipes you out. It pushes every one of your human gifts to its limit. Colleen, daughter, several years ago, Matt and I went up to the cabin to be with the whole family for Christmas. I don't remember the details, but for some reason, I was supposed to drive Mom to Salt Lake City the next day. As it happened, I already had another obligation and couldn't do it. When Dad heard my response, he just exploded, totally lost it. "You're being selfish," he said. "You really need to do this." And he said a lot of other things he didn't mean. Surprised by his abrasive response, I started crying. I was deeply hurt. I was so used to his being understanding and considerate all the time. In fact, in my whole life, I can remember only about 2 times that he really lost his temper with me, so it took me aback. I shouldn't have taken offense, but I did. Finally, I said, "Okay, I'll do it," knowing he wouldn't listen to my conflict. I headed home and my husband came with me. "We're not going back tonight. I don't even care if we miss the family Christmas party." And all the way down the canyon, I was harboring bad feelings. Shortly after we got home, the phone rang. Matt answered it. He said, "It's your dad." "I don't want to talk to him," I said, still hurt. But I really did, so I finally picked up the phone. "Darling, I apologize. There's really no excuse that could justify my losing my temper with you, but let me tell you what's been going on." He told me that they had just started building the house, finances had been swelling up, things at the business were kind of shaky, and then with Christmas and the whole family there, He had felt so much pressure, he blew up, and I received the brunt of it. I just took it all out on you. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I then returned the apology, knowing I had overreacted. Dad's apology was a big deposit in my emotional bank account, and we had a great relationship to begin with. Matt and I went back up that night. I rearranged my schedule for the next day, took my mom to Salt Lake City, and it was as if nothing had happened. If anything, my dad and I grew closer because he could apologize immediately. I think it took a lot for him to be able to step back from the situation so quickly and say, "I'm sorry." Even though our temper may surface only 1/100% of the time, it will affect the quality of all the rest of the time if we do not take responsibility for it and apologize for it. Why? Because people never know when they might hit our raw nerve, so they're always inwardly worried about it and defending themselves against it by second-guessing our behavior and curbing their own natural, spontaneous, intuitive responses. The sooner we learn to apologize, the better. World traditions affirm this idea. The Far Eastern expression is so apt here. If you're going to bow, bow low. A great lesson is also taught in the Bible about paying the uttermost farthing. Agree with thine adversary quickly, whilst thou art in the way with him, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. Verily I say unto thee, thou shalt by no means come out thence, till thou hast paid the uttermost farthing. There are undoubtedly a number of ways to apply this instruction in our lives, but one may be this. Whenever we disagree with others, we need to quickly agree with them, not on the issue of disagreement, that would compromise our integrity, but on the right to disagree, to see it the way they see it. Otherwise, to protect themselves, they will put us into a mental, emotional prison in their own mind, and we won't be released from this prison until we pay the uttermost farthing, until we humbly and fully acknowledge our mistake in not allowing them the right to disagree. And we must do this without in any way saying, "I'll say I'm sorry if you'll say you're sorry." If you attempt to pay the uttermost farthing by merely trying to be better and not apologizing, other people may still be suspicious and keep you behind these prison bars, behind the mental and emotional labels they have put on you that give them some feeling of security in knowing not to expect much from you. We all blow it from time to time. In other words, we get off track. And when we do, we need to own up to it, humbly acknowledge it, and sincerely apologize. "Honey, I'm so sorry I embarrassed you in front of your friends. That was wrong of me. I'm going to apologize to you and also to your friends. I should have never done that. I got on some kind of ego trip with you, and I'm sorry. I hope you will give me another chance." "Sweetheart, I apologize for cutting you off that way. You were trying to share something with me that you feel deeply about, and I got so caught up in my own agenda that I just came on like a steamroller. Will you please forgive me?" Notice again in these apologies how all four gifts are being used. First, you're aware of what's happening. Second, you consult your conscience and tap into your moral or ethical sense. Third, you have a sense of what is possible, what would be better. And fourth, you act on the other three. If any one of these four is neglected, the entire effort will break down, and you will end up trying to defend, justify, explain, or cover up the offensive behavior in some way. You may apologize, but it's superficial. It's not sincere. What happens when family members are not loyal to one another? When they criticize and gossip about the others behind their backs? What does it do to the relationship, to the culture, when family members make disloyal comments to other family members or to their friends? "My husband is such a tightwad. He worries about every penny we spend. My wife jabbers constantly. You'd think she could shut up and let me get a word in once in a while. Did you hear what my son did the other day? He talked back to a teacher. They called me from the school. It was so embarrassing. I don't know what to do with that kid. He's always causing trouble. I can't believe my mother-in-law. She tries to control everything we do. I don't know why my wife can't just cut the apron strings and get it over with." These comments are huge withdrawals not only from the person spoken about, but also from the person spoken to. For example, if you were to discover that someone had made one of these comments about you, how would it make you feel? You'd probably feel misunderstood, violated, unjustly criticized, unfairly accused. How would it affect the amount of trust in your relationship with that person? Would you feel safe? Would you feel affirmed? Would you feel you could confide in that person and your confidence would be treated with respect? On the other hand, if someone said something